We're going to talk about the gig economy now and a new report into modern working practices which calls for more rights for workers but has been criticised by some as feeble and not going far enough. Well, joining us now live is the Shadow Business Secretary, Rebecca Long-Bailey. A very good morning to you. Would you agree the gig economy then has been hugely beneficial for workers as well as the British economy?
Well, look, and I think the report makes an important point about two-way flexibility. Now, there are two kinds of gig employment, if you like, or insecure employment. There are those who choose it as a lifestyle choice, often high-skilled workers where their skills are in demand. They have the flexibility, they have the right and the privilege, really, to choose when and where they work. And it's a two-way flexible arrangement where they're not being exploited by the employer. Now, there's another kind of flexible working that often affects low-paid, precarious, insecure sectors of work, where, quite frankly, a large number of employees are being exploited. And in the case of Uber, for example, where we've seen that workers in the recent test case should have actually been classified as workers rather than self-employed contractors, if you like. They should have been given the protection and rights that workers enjoy. And it's not acceptable for companies to try and avoid this.
This report today says sick pay, paid holidays, additional protection over flexible working hours, stronger incentives to firms to treat workers fairly, stronger approach to workplace health. All those things sound pretty good to me.
Well, it sounds very positive, but the devil will be in the detail. I think there hasn't been enough work, especially in terms of self-employment. I think the report, as far as I can tell, calls for the government to look at support for the self-employed, but doesn't outline any detailed proposals as to how they would do that in terms of providing organisational methods, support structures, state benefits, for example. Also, looking at the case of flexible working, for the reports we've heard so far suggest that they don't go far enough. It introduces the principle of a dependent contractor to be used in cases like the Uber case, for example. Again, I haven't seen the detail, but I do fear that it will undermine the recent test case that was planning to have wide-ranging implications across the sector.
Do you use the gig economy? Have you ever taken an Uber, for example, or ordered food through Deliveroo?
No, I haven't. I haven't used Deliveroo, and I don't tend to use Uber taxis, so that's my personal choice.
The gig economy, though, is great for people who do want flexibility, and whilst their rights could be better protected, and perhaps the government hopes that that will happen, don't you think that too much regulation can stifle innovation and can actually damage the very firms that are giving work and giving flexibility?
Well, that's right. It's wrong to, impede businesses from growing. But what we're asking for are protection for workers, people who should be classified as workers. Now, the problem that we've got with certain platforms, such as algorithms that are used in Uber and other companies like that, is that they're not regulated. And it's very difficult to enforce fairness within those systems. So the government needs to look in extreme detail as to how they will protect workers in those industries and make sure that they're receiving a decent amount of pay. That if they're working in an employment situation where they should be classified as a worker, they have a secure employment contract. But what we've heard is that a minority of employers are using these methods and classifying workers as self-employed simply to avoid paying national insurance contributions, and that's not acceptable.
I just want to ask you about Theresa May's big speech today. She's asking the opposition to cooperate, not criticise. How serious is Labour about doing that? Because so far we haven't seen a huge amount of cooperation. We've just seen a lot of mudslinging and calling for another election.
Well, look, Theresa May has our manifesto, and I'd be pleased if she adopted any of the principles in there, but whether that happens remains to be seen. We've seen over the last 7 years a government that she was part of has eroded workers' rights. It introduced employment tribunal fees, for example, which impede many workers from seeking justice within the court system in terms of unfair practices at work. We've seen wages stagnate. The Institute for Fiscal Studies states that wages in 2022 will actually be lower than they were in 2008. We want the government to put its money where its mouth is, and if it can't deliver the change that Britain needs, then it needs to move to one side and let the Labour Party take over.
OK, Rebecca Long-Bailey, Shadow Business Secretary, many thanks.